Hello. And hello to folks who are watching the replay as well. Welcome to any new folks. And I'm just excited to have the final night of the HSP Leadership Summit. So good to see everybody, whether you've been here all 3 nights, one night, or this is your first night. I'm really excited to get a chance to chat with you a little bit more. And I also want to give a shout out. I know a lot of people who signed up for this are in Europe or elsewhere in the world and have been watching the replays. So it's always nice to be acknowledged as part of the experience too, even if you're watching this after the fact. So welcome. And we're just going to take a couple minutes, maybe the next 3 or 5 minutes, to let people settle in. So if you need to get a cup of water or run and use the bathroom, um, do that, please. You can be like me and light a candle and some incense. Got to make it vibey up in here. Um, and just settle in. Make sure you do have a journal and a pen or a pencil to write with. We're going to be doing a little bit of journaling tonight as we talk about identity work. And we'll make it a good one. We will try to stick to the hour or so. And like I've been saying each night, focus on your comfort. You can be off camera if you want to be lying down or puttering around doing the dishes or making dinner or eating. That is totally fine. No participation is needed. You can simply sit back and hopefully learn a little bit about what I'll be teaching about identity tonight. So, great. Well, I think I'll give it just another minute or two. I think a couple more people might join us, and I don't want them to feel left out. But do remember that this is being recorded for lifetime replay. And so if you do have to leave early, it's no problem. You will get the replay for all three. In fact, the replay for the first two are already up here, as long as you scroll down to the bottom. And after tonight, I'm going to kind of rejigger this page so the replays are up more prominently. And you can just bookmark that link and return to these things anytime that you like. Especially the EFT one from last night, which was such a joy. I really enjoyed getting to teach you guys a little bit about EFT and preview hopefully how that can make an impact on you as a leader. It can help you work through anxiety, through fear, through limiting beliefs, all that good stuff. It's really an important tool for the highly sensitive person. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, make sure you have a journal and a pen. We're going to do a tiny bit of journaling tonight. And let's go. Okay. So the trusty Canva presentation. We are going to talk about, we are here on evening 3. And I can just first say it's been really a joy talking to you guys, hearing from you, learning from you a little bit about what's going on for you, and being with you these past 3 nights. It kind of flew by for me. So just really grateful for the experience. It's always really fun to be in community with other like-minded, like-hearted people when we're talking about something important like leadership in the workplace. So I'm really grateful. So tonight is our final night, and we're talking about building the identity of a leader. So, I love to ask, where are you coming from? And if you've already shared where you're from, what does identity mean to you? Again, it's like imposter syndrome. It's nice we use the words a lot, but what do they actually mean to us? So if you feel comfortable enough, go ahead and drop in the chat room what identity means to you, if that feels okay, and or just where you're coming from. You don't have to put in your definition of identity either. But I do encourage you, even if you don't share it in the chat room, to take a minute and journal on it. What does identity mean to you? And while you do that, I'll share for anybody who's brand new tonight. I know if this is your 3rd night, you've seen me kind of go through this, but I am coming to you from about an hour, 75, 90 minutes, depending on the traffic, west of Washington, D.C. I live in a little town called Hillsborough near West Virginia. I'm still in Virginia. Yeah. Emily. Oh, hi, Emily and Chelsea. Hey, very cool. So what else? Anyways, that's where I'm coming from. I don't know about you guys. It's the end of the week, and I start to lose my cognitive steam by Thursday evening. Cassie's in Texas. It's so good to see you, Cassie. Okay. So identity can mean a variety of things, right? And for me, what I personally think, it's the combination of thoughts, belief, self-perception, right? It's how you see yourself, how you think of yourself, right? I mean, identity can be many other things, right? You might have an identity of a particular community, a racial identity, an ethnic identity, an identity of lineage, an identity as a daughter, a wife, a parent, right? But for the purposes of what we're talking about tonight, identity is how we picture ourselves, particularly within the container of leadership, right? And we're talking about how to consciously build our leadership identities. Doreen is in Mount Desert, Maine. Cool. Okay. So our final evening, sad face. And again, in case you're new, these are all up for replay at the link that I just shared in the chat room and the emails you've been getting. No need to be on camera, lifetime replays. You can tag me on Catherine Andrews, at Catherine Andrews on Instagram if you like. Yeah, and tonight's replay will be sent out tomorrow, but it will also just be at that same page linked. Trying to get them up same night. Oh, and just because I've enjoyed being here with you all and with the folks watching the replay, I'm extending the bonus for this group. If you enroll in HLA by Friday at midnight, you'll get that one-on-one leadership call with me. I just wanted to do that, especially for this group, just to say thank you because it's been such a joy to be with you guys. And I've really loved the people who've signed up. I've been talking to a lot of you either on Instagram or in Slack on email. And I think this cohort is going to be a really special one. It'll be the first one of HLA. This is my first time running the program. Yeah, and so there's a couple of other relevant links here. You guys know this by now. The discount code of HLA Early Bird goes till September 17th. And you'll be getting more waitlist email, stuff like that. Okay, in case you haven't met me, one more time. This is just a little bit about me, my credentials. I'm a certified life coach. My undergraduate degree is from the University of Virginia, and my master's is from Northwestern University. And I've been running my business coaching, doing business coaching, life coaching, leadership coaching, spiritual mentorship for highly sensitive people for about 4 years now. And it's really, really the great joy of my life. So again, I'm so glad to be here. Okay, so I asked this a little bit, but how do you define identity? And what do you think it would mean to have the identity of a leader? What is the identity of a leader? So either if you feel comfortable, share in the chat room what that means to you, or if you'd rather just keep it to yourself, take a second to journal on that. And I'm going to give us a few minutes here. And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm very interested in your particular thoughts because it's going to be different for everybody. Jason says identity feels more like a view of yourself as opposed to how others view you. Yeah, it's kind of a self concept, is another way that I might refer to it, right? And Doreen says, I see myself as a leader. That's wonderful because I think HSPs can often struggle with identifying as a leader, right? Even if you feel that innate quality of leadership, that innate call to leadership, the current identities of leaders and the current portrayal of leadership in society and what we're seeing in the workforce and around the world today is not necessarily something that we identify with. So it can be hard to place ourselves in the identity of a leader. But if you feel this call, that's what I'm encouraging you to do tonight, right? Because you may have a self concept right now, whether you've ever even thought about your identity or your self concept. You may not have the self concept of a leader. And that potential is absolutely within you if you're feeling that call. The identity of a leader requires intentional cultivation. You don't just, you're like, I'm a leader. One day you wake up and think it, right? You build towards it. You gather evidence for being a leader. You choose to take actions that a leader would take. You have the thoughts and beliefs of a leader, and all of these things I do think must be intentionally cultivated. And that's what we're here to do tonight. Before we do that, I'm going to just do a quick look. I'm going to show you a little bit of HLA, and let me bring it up real quick because I want to talk about like what the identity components in HLA are. So allow me to bring up the screen. Okay. So in case you haven't looked at the landing page, there's a lot in HLA, and this is the first time, I'm building it out. So you can walk through and see it on your own. But in terms of the lesson, the pre-work is mostly all already in there. And so we start in October, but there's plenty to keep you occupied in September. And when I say start in October, I mean the calls and the new lessons will start dropping. Foundational leadership, we'll do more EFT, mindset, emotional regulation, nervous system EFT work. We're also going to do some really interesting work around using internal family systems to talk about leading yourself, right? Whether or not you identify as a leader of others, we're all are leaders of us, right? And internal family systems, I won't go down this tangent. It's a beautiful, beautiful therapeutic approach for healing and growth. And the concept is we all have sort of mini villages of people, identities inside of us, and we are leading ourselves through the world. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about healing so we can lead, especially some of the stuff, healing from workplace trauma to lead from wholeness. A lot of HSPs and neurodivergent folks have experienced, whether they would identify it or not, trauma in the workplace, unfair firings, stress, exclusion, bullying. And so in order to step into leadership, we kind of have to do a little bit of healing work around that, because we've seen power used against us, and it can be scary to decide to wield that power as well, because what if it's unsafe? It was used in an unsafe way against us. So, but here we talk about the identity of a leader. So we're going to talk about a little bit, we're going to expand on what we're talking about tonight, building the authentic identity of a leader. We're going to get a little spiritual and woo. If that's your jam, you can always skip the more esoteric stuff if it's not of interest to you inside of HLA. But astrology can offer some interesting perspectives into your leadership, your natural leadership talents. We're going to be building out a leadership archetype. Archetype work is picking something that's resonant to you, an image or a consciousness that is well known in collective culture, like the queen or the gardener or the jester. There's something that everybody can kind of resonate with, and we're going to be creating an archetype that's going to give you a guide for how to step into becoming that person. We'll talk about your leadership environment, when we're going to articulate your 5 core leadership values and cast your leadership vision and mission. So, and then there's other fun stuff, energy practices, body and health routines. You can check that out on your own time. So let me go back to the presentation and we'll continue with identity. Where'd it go? 1 second. Okay. All right. So back to talking about identity work and what is it? How can we do it together? So this is what I believe, that your identity, your self-concept, your self-belief is absolutely the most important part of your leadership. If you can view yourself as a leader, consider yourself a leader, believe that you have the qualities of a leader, and begin acting as such, making choices from that belief, that is what will dictate your leadership. And I know that we all know this because we've had people in our lives who have been given the title of leader or boss or manager that did not have the identity of a leader. They did not sit comfortably in that role. And then there have been people who probably didn't have the external trappings of being a leader, whether it was the title or the salary or the hierarchy or whatever else that embodied leadership. Absolutely. So leadership is an identity. It's a self-concept, it's a self-belief. It's an internal thing that is then presented outwards, no matter what the external around you says. And here's something else I truly believe, that your identity is like a garden. You're either going to grow and cultivate intentionally, right? You're going to set your sights on becoming something that you desire, or something else will grow there, but just on its own. Oh, no problem, Emily. You can catch the replay. In short, your identity is going to be created consciously and intentionally, or unconsciously and intentionally. Which one are you going to pick, right? Humans are not that different from a plant. I mean, we are and we're not, right? And you can cultivate, say you have I'm not any sort of real gardener, though I have aspirations, but um, say you have a garden or a rose bush. Those places, the rose bush, the things in the garden, they can be cultivated, right? And what I mean by cultivated is that you can intentionally train a rose bush to go in a particular direction to grow up a wall or up a trellis. You can prune it, you can shape it. And a garden, you can intentionally choose to grow. You choose what is planted there, you choose the shape of it, you choose to water it and weed it and allow it to thrive, right? And these are intentional decisions to allow something to grow. And humans are much like this, in my opinion. We're growing every day, whether we realize and acknowledge it or not. And our growth can either be intentional and cultivated and thoughtful, and we can do daily actions to encourage the kind of growth we want, or it's going to happen. But it's going to happen unconsciously, and we're going to be growing from old patterns, generational beliefs, and legacies that maybe no longer serve us, or societal conditioning, right? So if you feel somewhere in your soul the calling of being a leader, but you have old patterns, conditioning, wounding that make you think that's not true for you, then that's not going to be true for you. You're going to continue to grow in the patterns that are pre-existing in you. But if you choose to want to change, to desire that change, and you have a vision, even if it's just a very foggy vision for what you desire to be, you can make choices to grow towards that vision, just like you would in a garden. So tonight I'm teaching the Be, Do, Have model. Some of you may have heard of it, but it's one of my favorite models for intentional growth and for identity work. So I'll read what's here. Most of us think we need to have a certain thing, usually more of a certain thing, so that we can finally do what we truly want to do: start a business, go on vacation, buy a home, in order to be what we truly want to be: peaceful, successful, fulfilled, inspired, generous, and loved. But, and this is from Mike Robbins, who's a workplace culture leadership author. In actuality, it works the other way around. When we focus on being what we want, joyful, confident, abundant, accomplished, and more, we can start doing things from this powerful state of being. And soon we discover that what we're doing winds up bringing us the things that we've always wanted to have. So let me explain this model a little bit more. So it's a lot of us, I think, are in the have and do. So you can be in be, do, have, do, be, or do, have, be. And so when we focus on the have model of leadership, we're thinking about this, we're working on accumulating things around us. This is like, well, when I have that next certification, or when I'm given that next title, or when I have this certain amount of salary, then I'll do the things that I'll want to do, and then I'll be a leader, right? And so when we're in this model of leadership, you're often waiting for externals to change before you can move ahead in leadership. You're waiting for that external permission, essentially. We talked a little bit about some having this kind of permission to be a leader last night, right? It's coming from outside of you. It's about the trappings, the things you've accumulated or earned over time. And it's not that those aren't important. You know, it's great to have education, certifications. I'm all for getting everybody promotions and raises too. But leadership doesn't essentially come from those things. And many of us think that it does. So when you're in the doer model of leadership, and I bet a lot of us might identify with this one, it's about constantly taking action, right? So I have to do in order to have, and only then will I be. So this is a tough one, right? So this is like for us overworkers who are like, well, I'll just do that one more meeting. I'll take that one more call. I'll do that one extra project. I'll respond to that final Slack message, right? And if I can just prove that I'm a doer and I do more, then I'll get the things that I need to have to then be a leader. And again, you're basing with the haver model, it's about what are you accumulating? What do you have? What do you need to get? In the doer model, it's almost like all you focus on is action. And there's a lot of not busy work necessarily, but sometimes, but you might be burnt out in this model, exhausted, wondering why you do, double the work of a coworker who seems to get more recognition, right? And then we have the B model of leadership, which is, in my opinion, the most authentic and effective one. And it's not what do I need to have before I can start, or what work do I need to do, but who do I need to be, right? So if I want to be a leader, what kind of leader would have access to the kind of outcomes I want? And then being that kind of person, what would I be doing? So it's like a waterfall almost. Or even a better metaphor is like a magnet. When a magnet just pulls in by being a magnet, right? And so when we can focus on the being, if you're already the person, if you're already a leader inherently in the way you act, the self concept that you have, the choices that you make, then the rest tends to flow a little bit more easily from there. And other people can sense that too. I'd love to hear in the chat room, do you feel, maybe some of you feel like I do feel like I'm in the B model, or are you in the have model or the do model? And maybe you don't know, or you see elements of yourself all over the place. But if any of these are resonating to you, just drop that in the chat room a little bit. Another sip of water. Okay. Doer, burner, outer, says Gatsby. Yeah, I'm not surprised that we have a lot of doers, right? Yeah, and Holly says the haver. Yeah. And there can be components of both. This isn't like you're one or the other exclusively. And it's not that leaders who are working on the being don't do. And this is a little bit of a hard concept to explain, but maybe my story here will help you understand this a little bit. Maureen says this, I'm in B mode when I pay attention to how I feel when I'm doing the parts of my work that I love to do. Exactly. The B mode, there's presence there. You're accessing feelings that are important to you that feel good, no matter the circumstances around you. Yeah. Rebecca says, and to have her what everyone else seems to have already. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got this coaching a long time, not a long time ago, when I started my business about 3.5, 4 years ago, from a program I was in called Five Figure Freedom, which was run by this woman, this business coach, DL Sharon. And I was really stressed at the time. I had just started my coaching business. Anybody else who's ever done entrepreneurship, the first, honestly, I'm going to say the first 4 years are pretty stressful. I finally feel like I'm getting my footing my fourth year in, and that makes sense. It's like college, right? You got to go through some levels of education. But I was in my first year and I was really stressed about making money. It just didn't seem possible for me. And I had started to make some money. And I was then kind of obsessed. Like some parts of the coaching industry are weird and like kind of indoctrinate you a little bit. And there's always this messaging about becoming like a 6-figure coach or, making a 6-figure year or whatever. And I was stressing about making that kind of money. And the woman who was coaching me at the time was like, she's like, Catherine, it wouldn't matter if you made 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, if you made $1 million, because the way you're talking about money right now, it's going to be exacerbated and magnified times 100 when you get to different levels of money. So unless you work on how you are around money right now, nothing will ever change, no matter how much money you make. And she said, how you get there is how you're going to be when you get there, right? And that really was like for me. So what she coached me on, what I also decided to work on myself a little bit, was thinking of myself as the person who was already earning the kind of money that I wanted to make in my business, right? Because we're doing a lot of things in order to be and feel a certain way. And so when I thought about, okay, well, if I'm confident and successful in my business, I'm calm around money. I don't stress that much about it. I look at my money, I review my money a couple of times a month, and I analyze my sales and my expenses. If I'm successful already and I'm bringing in the kind of money I want to make, then I'm taking one day a week off. I'm taking Fridays off, right? And I'm also streamlining my schedule. At that time, I was taking coaching calls from like 7 a.m. till 9 p.m., and it was like not really sustainable. Um, I would maybe be taking a vacation every once in a while, which as a self-employed person can be really hard to get yourself to do, right? And so I wrote down all of the things that I thought once I had six figures, what that would give me. And then I looked and said, how can I begin to do this right now? And not all of them were totally possible, right? I wasn't making enough money to go take a fancy vacation or anything. But I was like, can I take off one Friday a month, right? Can I start to review my money more thoughtfully and intentionally? Can I become more confident on my sales calls and understand that I will make the money, it will convert, right? Can I take a staycation? If I can't afford to take a vacation right now, can I just even take like an at home middle of the week, 1 day staycation where I take a bath and watch a movie, right? And so this helped me understand that how I got there is how I'm going to be when I get there. And if I got to that six figures in a frantic, terrified, scared, anxious, fearful, burnout way, I was still going to be like that at the six-figure mark or whatever, arbitrary money thing. And that's what I want you to think about with leadership too, right? So, you might have a vision of yourself as a leader, and a desire for what that looks like, the kind of money you're making, the kind of impact you're having, the kind of respect you have, the team you're managing, the work you're doing, right? And I want you to think about what does that look like for you, right? And are you being that way now? Right? Is that happening in your life right now? Are those qualities of that future self leadership in your life right now? And sometimes they're going to be very present, and sometimes they'll be like, wow, I'm actually a far way off from that. And that's what being instead of doing or having looks like, right? It's looking at yourself 1, 3, 5 years down the road, um, sensing, intuiting the qualities, the feelings, the experiences you'll be having when you're at that level, and then bringing them in very small increments into your life right now. And from there, things tend to flow. I don't understand how it works, but it just seems to go a little bit easier. Okay, so what I want you to do is get out your journal, and you're also welcome to share any or all of this or none of this in the chat room. I'd love to know, what is one thing you hope to achieve in your workplace or leadership? And here's just a few examples. It could also be better balance, right? I hear that a lot from HSPs. You might want to make more money. It doesn't have to, just pick one thing. It doesn't have to be the thing. There's no right or wrong answer here, but something that would be nice. If you feel okay sharing it, drop it in the chat room. And if you'd rather not share, that's perfectly fine too. Might be a little tender, a little vulnerable. Thing I'd like is to do more speaking opportunities, more workshops and trainings like this on a larger scale. Maybe even go into other workplaces and begin to do that. Do more public speaking. Doreen says, I love that suggestion of better balance, just because I would like to not be burned out, right? Yeah. So it may be a quality of life, an emotion you'd like to feel, or a tangible outcome that you'd like in your leadership. So just take another minute to think on that. Maybe hard to come up with. Sometimes we're not really letting ourselves dream a lot either, right? Sometimes it seems like we just have to work with what's in front of us and there's not really a lot of possibility. And I understand that. I feel happy, fulfilled, seen, and appreciated. Jason said, I'd like to make an impact on my community while having a balance in life. SKB says, feeling more confident as a leader, stepping into my own power, not trying to do it, quote unquote, the right way. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So a lot of these are feelings, and some of them are tangible outcomes. Great mix. To give us maybe 5 to 7 minutes to answer these prompts. How will I feel when I have or achieved that thing? What kind of activities will I be doing when I achieved that thing? What choices would I be making after I had achieved that goal? Right? So if you're looking for balance, you might feel peace. What kind of activities you might be doing, more meditation or yoga, or spending more time with family. Choices might be more about choosing from your mental health instead of your work obligations. Um, for me, like if I'm talking about like more public speaking, more workshop trainings and doing trainings generally, I'll feel. I mean, I really feel purposeful when I'm teaching. It's something that I really really enjoy. Um, I'll feel like I'm making a bigger impact. What kind of activities will I be doing when I achieve that thing? Well, I will be focusing, on creating more presentations, right? Like thinking about what are the kind of workshops and large scale trainings can I do? I might be reading books on more effective workshop design or networking more, right? Um, and I might be talking about myself like as a trainer. And what choices would I be making after I had achieved that goal? And that's kind of similar for me in my example, but yours might be a little bit different. So take a minute, and whenever you're done journaling, just drop the word done in the chat room, and we'll kind of gauge where the group is at. And then you are also welcome to share if you would like. Not know the answers to some of these. Just take your best guess or let yourself free write a little bit and see what comes up. Minutes here. Other folks finish, it's a great time to do some nervous system regulation. So maybe do some 4-7-8 breathing or just some conscious breathing, a little bit of light EFT tapping. Down. So we'll give it another couple of minutes. Of course, you can always complete these prompts on your own later if you're really getting into it. Share any takeaways or two, that'd be great. Um, Take about one more minute here. Head and move on to the next slide. To look at is the answers to these earlier questions and write down 3 ways you can begin to be that person right now in your current reality and circumstances. And this is going to stretch your brain a little bit too, right? So I don't know what you all wrote to these prompts. How will I feel when I have achieved that thing? What kind of activities will I be doing when I achieve that thing? What choices would I be making after I had achieved that goal? But for me, like if I was talking about wanting to do more presenting, more training at a larger scale, um, I might be doing some more networking. I might be choosing to, learn how to design better slides. Um, these are things that I could be doing right now in the moment before I have the larger like training audiences or workshop audiences, right? So, an example of this is like away from the leadership thing, but it's something I use in my intentional living class is I talk about how when I was living in my condo in DC, I knew the one thing I really wanted wherever I lived next was a clawfoot bathtub. And I just wanted it to feel really luxurious. And, you know, I had this bathtub at the time that could barely cover, it couldn't cover my whole body all at once. When I was taking a bath, I felt like a little kid in there, right? It was like a really tiny bathtub. But I didn't have the bathtub I wanted then, but I could bring in some of the elements to the bathtub I had in the moment, right? So I kept that bathtub really clean. I got like some cute little pump bottles for my soap and shampoo and everything. I had eucalyptus from the shower head. I got things to like, so I could fill the water like as much to the brim as possible, right? And so what I was doing is I was bringing in the feeling that I thought a clawfoot bathtub would give me to what was in my current reality, right? So I wasn't waiting to have the clawfoot bathtub until I felt like I had a luxurious bath experience. I was trying to figure out, I was being creative in ways I could do that right then with what was available to me at that moment in my current reality. So look at your answers to the previous prompts and then write down 3 ways you can begin to be that person, make those choices, feel that way right now in your current reality and circumstances. And it might be a stretch, this is kind of a creative exercise, but do your best. And we'll do another, yeah, like 3 or 5 minutes here. And you can share in the chat room, or you can also just write done in the chat room. Ask for my advice. I'm kind of can have a little bit of like a talent for for the same the kind of thinking. Doreen says morning time in the garden, clear beginning and end to the working time, and put away the phone for the evening. Right. So that's a beautiful example of cultivating more of better balance, I think is what you said, Doreen, right? Cool. And I'll see what else you guys think of, right? Somebody had mentioned I'd like to not be burned out, right? And so, that's a really hard one for HSPs. It's a hard one for all of us. We have a lot of obligations at work. The pace and volume of work can really be, quite stressful and the expectations. Um, but a lot of us are saying, well, when I have a different job, then I'll be less burned out. Or when I have more time, then I'll be less burned out, right? And we're coming at it from the having model. But where we want to start is the being model of less burned out. And to be less burned out, you might have to start really small where you are. You might commit to 1 minute of meditation in the morning, commit to setting a better boundary with your boss once a week, um, and going to your favorite yoga class that you have ignored for the past 6 months, right? So it's not like you're going to have better balance right away like that, but you're going to integrate it into your life by becoming the person who makes those sorts of choices and commitments. Tim. Slow today too. I feel that. Sarah says I can make decisions out of love, not fear, develop some affirmations around already being a leader, have fun and take risks, detaching from the results. Jessica says I could do one action that feels right to me instead of doing what I think others will want me to do. Schedule breaks throughout the day and actually take them. And actually, Jessica, this is why HLA is such a holistic leadership program. When you're burned out, a lot of the times what it means is you're actually stuck in chronic fight or flight, and it's really hard to take the time to slow down because your nervous system doesn't perceive it to be safe to slow down. It's become so accustomed to that hypervigilance, and so taking a break but also doing 30 seconds, 60 seconds of nervous system regulation, the tiniest amount your system can handle, so that it then feels safer to take breaks and actually use them, right? Because I know we can all be like, oh my God, it's not safe to step away from the computer. What if somebody emails me? What if somebody slacks me? What if they think I'm not there? What if I'm not hypervigilantly monitoring my communications? That's a flight response, and integrating the nervous system work will help with that. Chloe says I can spend at least 30 minutes a day working on my music. Cool. Which I feel like I never really have time and energy ordinarily to do because I feel so busy at my job, right? That's a beautiful example because that's another way of when I have more time, when I have more energy, then I'll work more on my music, right? And I'm not saying that I I believe that that your job is very busy and that's probably draining your time and your energy. But do you have 3 minutes to work on your music? Do you have 30 minutes to work on your music, right? And you might have to start smaller than you think, right? I recommend this all the time, and I think it's one of the most important things that our brains don't really comprehend. Sometimes we have to start at the 1, 3, and 5 minute basis of doing a new habit. We were like, I'm going to meditate 30 minutes a day. And I'm like, that's not going to work. You've never meditated before. Try for 1 minute a day, and then you kind of build up to it. So, but I love that. No way to do this incorrectly, Jason. So I may have done this incorrectly. I focus on ways to be the person who accomplished achievements. Yeah. Be bold, be prominent, and be inspirational, right? And then it's just about like finding ways you can do that right now in your current circumstances, right? So you may be bolder in a relationship with a friendship. Um, you may be more prominent, like being more prominent may be freshening up your social media profile and getting new headshots. Being inspirational may be, posting an inspirational quote once a day on your social media, or sharing inspirational messages, in your current workplace, right? So it's like bringing the action in there too. A lot of times, here's an example that may ground this a little bit more for folks. So say you you wanted to be more visible in your workplace or leadership, right? Like visibility can be a big thing for HSPs. It doesn't always feel safe to be seen, to be visible. Um, so you might feel, and actually, I'll just jump straight ahead to this one. So you're going to have to start with small ways of being visible in your life right now, right? Like being visible is posting a selfie on social media, which I know a lot of people that I work with are like, don't make me do that. Whatever you do, don't make me do that. Or updating your LinkedIn to look a little more polished. Um, it might be committing to speaking up in a workplace meeting once a week, not every day, just once a week, that small thing, right? So these are the things that we're kind of working on. We're looking ahead to where we want our identities to be, how we want to perceive ourselves as a leader. And then we're being like, given my current reality, given my current time constraints or other obligations, what are small ways I can do that right now, right? And even the smallest way matters. Okay. And then finally, let's do another 3 or 5 minutes here. What are 3 thoughts the leader you wish to be is thinking regularly? What is one action the leader you wish to be is taking every day? And what are 1 to 3 feelings the leader you wish to be is feeling every day? So take time to think about this and jot those down, and then just drop done in the chat room when you have thought of a few of those. really overlap with some of the journal prompts that you've already come up with. That's perfectly fine. I'll talk about that a bit when we finish, Chloe. You're here because we'll move on, wrap up in a few minutes. And you might not know all the answers to these right now. These are something you can ponder over time too. I'm going to move us to our final kind of slides, and I'll make time to answer that excellent question in the chat room. But if you have any of these, welcome to share them in the chat room. But this is something you can consider, right? You might not know right now, right? Because this is asking you to be a future version of yourself. And that's not always immediately accessible. And so sometimes it takes time to figure these things out. So when I spoke about cultivating intention and intentional identity, um, yeah, Dorian says, how can I really pay attention to the person I'm interacting with? Engage with intentionality. Slowing down. How do I slow down and be more focused and effective? Yeah. So those are questions you can ask yourself throughout the day. So this could be a daily or a few times a week journaling exercise for you to try out. So when we're talking about cultivating an identity intentionally, I want you to think of it like you're building a garden. And when you are building a garden, a thriving, successful garden, you are tending to it every day. You are weeding it every day. You are watering it every day. You're checking in on its progress. You know, at the end of the growing season, you're doing some magical stuff. I don't really know how a garden works. At the beginning of the growing season, you're planning out like what you want to grow. And in between, you're focusing on the quality of the soil, all these sorts of things, right? And so this journal exercise, you can think of it as like your regular identity exercise to continue to cultivate the identity of the leader that you want to step into or change around anything else. So today, so here are the prompts. Today, I have the opportunity to become a leader when I dot, dot, dot. I am the kind of leader who dot, dot, dot. And today I will focus on dot, dot, dot. And it may be very simple. You may say, today I have the opportunity to become a leader when I intentionally slow down and listen to my colleague, right? I am the kind of leader who is willing to try things that scares them. Today, I will focus on showing up with visibility at this work meeting, right? And you can kind of just let these answers flow. You don't always need to know. when you tend to start journaling, they tend to kind of come out at you. But basically, you're starting to look all around you for the opportunities for you to intentionally cultivate this identity that you want to step more into, right? And this journaling can take 3, 5 minutes, if that really. And if you do it on a very regular basis, it will start to change your identity and it can be really powerful. I saw there's a question, but if there are other questions, please drop them in the chat room. We may go a little past 9, but I'll stay on as long to answer as many questions as possible. If you have to go, I totally understand. And the final wrap up details. And I want to answer Loie's questions because it's a really good one. Enroll in HLA by midnight this Friday. You can get a one-on-one call with me, the early bird. The cohort begins in October. This cohort, there's already around a dozen people enrolled, and I think we'll have more. And it's a beautiful group, and I'm very excited for it. And you can always get in touch with me, Catherine at Catherine D. Andrews. Sorry to learn my own name, or on Instagram. And I did just want to mention, if HLA isn't for you, there's lots of other ways to work for me. Maybe it's not for you at all. Maybe it's not for you right now. It will open again next year. I do one-on-one coaching. I do VIP days, which are like an intensive, like 7 to 8 hour coaching engagement where we might work on a focused issue, pre-work, post-work. I have a Someday Soother membership where we do tarot, we do New Moon Journal circles, and I do monthly master classes. And I have self-paced courses on intentional living, dating, and business. I actually forgot to include that I will be relaunching my Soothe Mastermind, which is a self-discovery, healing, and getting in touch with nature and spiritual wisdom mastermind that's going to be running in 2024. Oh, so thank you. This has really been a joy. And I'm going to stop the slides here so I can answer this question because I think this is a really important one. And if anybody needs to jump off because I know we're right at 9, it's totally fine. Okay, so Loie asks, this is just a side note, but is it just me or does the thought of having to be in a leadership role feel stressful? Like it immediately gives me this kind of tense, heavy feeling in my chest. So first off, like there are a lot of ways to be a leader. And I think a lot of us can look at the models of leadership today and we can be like, oh, good question, Cassie, yeah. Be like, I don't want to be that. I'm not that. Nor do I want to be that or have that kind of responsibility. That's not me. And so I totally understand that. HLA is not about making you a person who is like becoming like a politician that works all the time and has a ton of pressure on them. I mean, if that's what you do desire, I think that's really cool. It's about cultivating leadership in your life, whatever that looks like. And I think leadership, I talked in some of the promotional material about like big leadership versus small leadership. I think we're moving into an era of small leadership. And I don't mean that in a diminutive way or to be throwing away leadership. It's like we're moving into an era where we're going to have to be more community based. You can see this all around us, right? Like globalization is real, obviously. Like we're all impacted by what we do on this globe, but there's a lot happening where we're going to be more in smaller communities too. An example of this is climate change and climate disasters. We're going to have to know our communities because more and more we're going to be experiencing climate disasters, as sad and scary as it is to acknowledge. And there's going to be leadership opportunities in that, right? There are leadership opportunities in town councils or just speaking up at a town council meeting. There are leadership opportunities in education or in communication online, right? Like I think you can be a leader. Like I think sometimes like Instagram influencers in some ways can be leaders, right? Maybe not all of them, but there's a way that they're communicating and shepherding movements online in a lot of ways too. So I just want to allow you guys to reframe your concept of leaderships and understand that it doesn't mean, I'm not saying you need to, I'm not casting leadership as like a CEO of like a 5,000 person company, right? Or even just like a manager of your team. I'm talking about leadership as like the way in which we interact with our community, the way we interact with our families, the way we interact with our friends, ourselves, and how are we like affecting change in the world as we move about it as a highly sensitive person. And that can be your leadership looks like you are kind to the cash register in town, or you're organizing a food drive for displaced residents from a climate disaster, right? So open your mind to the kind of scope of leadership that we're going to need in the future as we get more community oriented and kind of are more local is what I hope. Um, and then the other thing I'll say is, so I teach on dating and business as well. And there's a lot of people are like desire to be in a relationship. I'll use a dating example. But actually, the thought of being in a relationship actually stresses them out. And so they consciously desire a relationship, but subconsciously they're like, ooh, you know, they may have had past wounding experiences, or all they can focus on is like what they'll have to give up in a relationship. So maybe they have a beloved art hobby and they're like, God, if I'm in a relationship, I'm not gonna have time for my art. I'm gonna have to be spending all this time with the other person, right? Whether they're kind of aware of thinking this or not. And so what I coach them on is like learning to energetically open to dating. And that's thinking about the possibilities of dating rather than the limitations and the fears and the sacrifices. It's true, whether in dating or leadership, if you move towards those things, you are going to have to change. There are sacrifices. This is in the pre work. I actually talk about like, if you want to step more into your leadership, what are you willing to change? Because there you will have to change to be a leader. You will have to change to date. Things are going to have to change. You know, if you long term get together with somebody, move in together, you're going to have less closet space, right? You may have to become more vulnerable or learn to communicate better. And these things are totally normal and fine. But I want you to start to think about like with leadership, we can only think about like the pressures and the responsibilities, and I can energetically close us off to leadership. And I do this, right? Like you kind of protect your heart space and you're like, ooh. And I want to think about like what are the what I coach people then on dating is I think about like what are the possibilities. So for example, I had this real life example that this woman was like, I'm an artist. I've had to really set a lot of boundaries around my art. And I'm scared that if I get into a relationship, I'm going to give up my art practice because I'm going to get sucked into a relationship. And so we planned for that scenario, how she could communicate to a future partner that like Sundays were her art day, how she could stick to her self promise around that. And we also thought about possibilities. Like, what if she met another artist and they had art day together? And this other artist that she started dating really understood how important her art was to her. And so I encourage you to do that in leadership too, right? Like, where are you feeling like, oh, this bad thing's going to happen and this stressful thing's going to happen? And then how can you plan for it, were it to happen? And then also, how can you think of the possibilities? Like, what would energetically open you to leadership? So that's something to think about too. And I hope that helps a little bit. Um, and then this last question I see in here, Cassie asks, are dates for our meetings live yet? So yes. So the way the calls work, so HLA is a lifetime program. So all calls will be recorded and you'll have access to coaching throughout the course of the program. And great question, Jennifer. I'll get to that too. So the coaching calls will be a mix of guest workshops and me coaching as well. And they will be the first Mondays of the month at 8 p.m. And then the second Tuesdays of the month at 12 p.m. for our European friends or hopefully elsewhere in the world. And hopefully the Monday 8 p.m. works for Australia. I think it does. Time zones are hard. So, and I'm also willing to adjust that once we kind of have this final cohort too. So I'm going to be checking in on that, right? The calls all have like a pre-submission form. So you can still get coached by not being on the call. Like you ask your question and I will answer it during the coaching call. And they're also all recorded. And the app that I use or the platform that I use, Kajabi, has an app that basically makes listening to the replays like podcasts. So it's easy to catch up on the go and listen to replays if you can't make them live. And those are going to be kind of like a little bit of me teaching whatever the concept that week or that month is, and your questions, right? Like, I want you guys to come and get answers to your questions, get coaching from me and get coaching from your community as well. Because the benefit of something like HLA is just you're going to have other people around, other highly sensitive folks, other empathetic people who desire to have more leadership in their life and who are also really smart. Like, I have the best people, and if you guys have been here over the past 2 or 3 nights, all 3 nights maybe, you can kind of see the sweetness in the community, right? And the thoughtfulness in these people. So, I'll be coaching, of course, but other people are going to have really great ideas. Jennifer asks, what is the difference between office hours and calls? So I'm going to have an online office hours every Friday. I'm going to check in the Slack community and just see at 10 a.m. on Fridays what's going on. Do you have a situation? Do you have a coaching call? Do you have a win you want to celebrate? Right. And those office hours will go on for 30 to 60 minutes on Friday mornings. And that's just a chance for like the in between moments. You couldn't make a call that month, but you need some advice. And I mean, the Slack is pretty open too. So I do a ton of real time coaching in all of my containers. And if you've never used Slack before, it's a mobile and a desktop chat app, basically. There's a dedicated channel in my Slack right now to HLA. You can join, and that's where you'll ask your questions about HLA. But the office hours are kind of just like, think of like if you went to college or university, professors and teaching assistants often had office hours, which were when you could just drop in and like work out, a problem with them or ask them questions or just sit and talk to them. And that's kind of like I'll be doing virtual office hours in Slack. So, yeah, I think most of this info is on the landing page too. And I know the landing page is just like 10,000 words long. So it's hard to find these details. So if there were any questions I didn't answer tonight or more questions come to mind for you, please email me or DM me on Instagram. Or if you joined the Leadership Summer Series and you're in the Slack already, you can message me on the Slack as well. I'm very happy to answer more questions. So, okay, my friends, I don't see any other questions. I know we're already past time, but I hope these past 3 days have been valuable and interesting to you. Whether or not you join HLA, I want you to go forward with the belief that you have leadership skills to offer. HSPs are incredible, empathetic, creative, thoughtful, community oriented. We have so much to bring to leadership. Even if you don't quite believe that yet, use some of the skills and tools that you've learned in the last 3 days. Check out the replays, watch them as many times as you need, and just reach out to me anytime. I'd love to work with you, talk to you in any capacity, and help however I can. So it has been wonderful. And thank you so much. It's been impactful for me too. And hopefully I'll either see some of you in HLA or on other platforms. And yeah, just thank you so much and good night, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend. So take good care of yourselves. Bye, everybody. You're so welcome. Bye bye.